Hello, everyone. This is Isaac from the future. Just want to say there are timestamps for the review in the description. So if you want to skip to a certain part or listen to the whole thing, either way, you can check the description. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tekken Talk. Today is the day we got to talk about Tekken 8, kind of in review form. Talk about the pros, the cons, and just how the launch has been. Because, of course, it was a bit of a rough start, but we're a week out, a little over a week now. I think I've played quite a bit of the game, despite how busy work has been. I'm sure many of you have also played quite a bit. So let's kind of summarize some stuff and talk about it. So, quick disclaimer, this is mostly a full review. There's a few game modes I haven't played, to be honest. Um, but they're just not too interesting to me, so I'm going to kind of exclude them from my review, which is Tekken Ball and Arcade Quest. So if you want to hear more about Tekken Ball or Arcade Quest, I recommend checking out a different review. But I will mainly be focusing on online mode, practice mode, replay, and Super Ghost Battle, and I guess the story as well. In fact, let's quickly start with the story. So Tekken 8 is a continuation of like all 8 Tekken games with the Mishima story and the throwing people off of cliff storyline. And I gotta say, I was very pleasantly surprised. So Tekken 7 story, if you haven't played it, is abysmal. It's basically like a monotone AI sounding narrator describing like scenes, then it's a 30-second CG cutscene, and then it's a battle, and that's basically the whole story. And it was an underwhelming length. I think it was like 3 hours. Whereas in Tekken 8, depending on how, quickly you dispatch of your opponents, I think it's between 3 to 4 hours. It took me a little over 3 hours to play, but the content within those 3 to 4 hours is just so infinitely better. I'm not going to spoil stuff in case you're interested, but I will say a lot of my concerns were like dealt with. So for one, you do play as different characters, so you don't just play as Jin in the demo if you were worried about that. Two, the CG cutscenes only get better as the game goes on. Like the cutscenes are really, really great. Three, the transition between the cutscenes and the gameplay is a con, but it does feel to me at least better than the demo. There are still a couple moments when it's jarring, but thankfully in like the biggest moments, like the finales and stuff, I didn't really feel it that much personally, but definitely early on in the game, it's a bit of a jarring kind of transition to see this like 4K render beautiful thing into like still beautiful, but like kind of a different art style in game render. So the story mode, I think, was great. Supposedly, there's multiple endings. I don't really know how to get the multiple endings, but if you don't get the ending you want, I guess search on YouTube. And then there's also character episodes, which again, I haven't really played through much, but I've enjoyed watching the endings on YouTube. And so overall, the quality of the story and the CG cutscenes and just like the experience, the music, we got to talk about the music, has been great. The music, both within the story and just within the game itself, I personally am a huge fan. I know there's some stages, some songs that people are a little mixed on, like Sanctum, like the dum 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 dum. I love the dum 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 dum. Uh, but I know there's some mixed reviews. But the great news is, depending on or no matter which Tekken music you like, as long as there is Tekken music you like, the jukebox mode, you can kind of change songs within Tekken basically anywhere. So character select screen, practice mode, any stage, you can really customize based on previous Tekken games music, and it's really, really cool. And so yeah, that's been great. Story mode was great. The only major cons I would say are again kind of the transitions, especially early on in the game between the rendering scenes and the gameplay is a little bit iffy. And two, I would say the difficulty options aren't the best. So like the ultra hard maybe isn't hard enough, and then the ultra easy is like not even Tekken. It's just like no matter what you do, you'll win, which is fine. But like even the medium seemed a bit a bit off to me. So I would say those are the main two cons I have. For a Tekken game, I think it does, it does enough. It's not like God of War or like some massive single player game. Elden Ring, Tekken Ring, but it's definitely good enough. And so then jumping into the next kind of offline mode I want to talk about, which is Super Ghost Battle. This was this is what kind of brought me back to doing these podcasts. So I did podcasts kind of in 2021 for a while. You can still see them on the channel. I took a prolonged break for personal reasons. But what kind of brought me back after that break was the announcement of Super Ghost Battle and how excited I was. So I have now tested quite a bit of Super Ghost Battle. One of my favorite things to do is to go to the leaderboard, the online leaderboard, and download a pro player's ghost and play against them and just see, where we're at. Especially because a week in and people have played, hundreds and hundreds of games, I'm assuming there's going to be enough data for the ghosts to start being like maybe not as good as they'll ever be, especially update pending, but definitely better than the first day or two. And overall, I would say as a training tool, especially for people who don't love playing with friends online and like losing over and over again, well, or just like playing a match and losing a bunch. I can imagine it being a good training tool, especially from an offense perspective, in that uh, a lot of the ghosts that you can download have really good throw breaks, have pretty decent blocking ratios and stuff like that. So breaking them down can be a little bit tricky. On the other hand, I got to be honest, they're not quite as good as I was hoping. They're not quite as good as the marketing led us to believe. So, for example, yesterday I downloaded K Wiss's Ghosts. Shout out to K Wiss. You can find him on YouTube. But he's a professional, I think, professional Hwarong player. He's also a commentator. But his Hwarong is like famously nasty, right? Like the offense vortex, the backdashing into whiff punish. Like, I will say the thing they get right is definitely his throw breaks. But given that he's one of the highest ranking players in the whole leaderboard, I'm assuming he's played a lot of matches. So taking that into account, his ghost is relatively underwhelming, at least for me. So playing as Azucena, which I guess matters because it depends on how many times he played Azucena. I'm not sure if the stage matters, but playing as Azucena in the like big foresty stage, I was able to very easily beat this ghost. And in real life, Kwis is probably 10-0ing me. I can maybe get one game, but in my current form, there's no way I'm 3-0ing Kwis twice, like how I played against his ghost. But I did test some things, right? So throw breaks were on point. The down 3-4 timings, which again he's pretty famous for, were pretty on point. But the combo drops, I think they somewhat over corrected for this feature, because a big part of their marketing and their advertising was, even if you drop combos, the ghost will learn when and how you drop combos. Kwis's ghost did not complete one combo. Not one combo. Out of like 8 combo attempts. So I mean, that's a huge issue, right? If your feature to capture these combo drops, like once it happens once, is like a permanent thing, that's a huge issue. And that's not really reflectant of how not only they advertise it, but like they claim it's like a Q learning imitation art AI thing. That's not how an AI would work, because there's no way Kwiss's combo drop ratio is like 0 for 8. So that was a problem. The other problem is there's no clear like mix-up-y game plan. So it really did feel, unfortunately, like I'm in a situation, if there is a similar situation in some database, then it will repeat what it has seen before. If not, it will kind of flail around until it gets into a similar situation. that was my experience against a couple of pro players ghosts, like Kawis and Pina, unfortunately. So that part of things was underwhelming. On the other hand, for some reason, again, I'm not exactly sure why, but if you play against your own ghost and you do some sort of like learning stage where you just play against your own ghost and you'll see some learning icon, that I've had much more success with, in the sense of when I play my own ghost a lot of times, it does feel more like I'm playing against a real player. And my only hypothesis, well, I have two hypotheses. One is it's some placebo effect because I know it's playing against myself. Or two, it's because it really is super dependent on data and very specific situations, like very specific stage, very specific character, very specific moves, which is disappointing. But if that is the case, then it makes sense, right? If I play against my own ghost 10 times on the same stage, it will have a lot of data on that stage and how I play to start really replicating the play style. So I would say this is kind of a pro for beginner players, the Ghost system. It is a neither pro nor con for intermediate players. Slight pro maybe, but then when you get to like advanced players, it's really kind of a null factor. Like I don't think it'll affect many players at a higher level. That being said, it's still a nice addition, and if anyone from the Tekken team is listening to this, which who knows, one thing I would recommend is to think about having a like base model, a base AI model. I don't know how the back end of your system works, but some sort of base model that is a Tekken fundamentals model that just can replicate a general Tekken player. So you could do this through some sort of adversarial learning, where you try and distinguish between a Tekken player and a ghost and just make that better and better, and then add on a imitation or like copying term to try and replicate players' play styles. Again, I don't know how advanced their AI systems are, but as someone who works in AI, that's kind of my high level advice. Okay, moving on from Super Ghost Battle, we have to talk about the number one for me biggest improvement over Tekken 7. Well, I would say tied, which is the practice mode and the replay and tips setting. In other words, the tools for getting better, the tools for labbing, and just the tools for gaining a better understanding of the game have been improved drastically, really drastically. So, for example, the in practice mode, you can do a second action punishment, which basically means when the opponent CPU blocks or takes an attack, it will respond with a certain attack. It's not perfect. There's some tricky things with like crouch guarding and standing. But in general, what this means is you can make setups and frame traps a trillion billion times easier than you could in Tekken 7. Right? In Tekken 7, you basically had to pick your opponent's character, or pick the character you wanted to create a frame trap with as the opponent, and then record it, and then test a bunch of different options yourself to see which one beats it and which one gets trapped. Whereas now you can just do a punishment setting against a character who is not your own character and look at their options and frame trap them. And it's just so much better. It's so much cleaner. It's made creating offense in practice mode and theorizing about offense so much more fun. I will disclose I spent a majority of my playtime in practice mode, just exploring the characters and also improving my movement since I switched to WASD controls. So I have like a Mave Arcade controller, which is a small WASD controller, which I'm really enjoying. But it's taking some time to practice, so I spent most of my time in practice mode. The practice mode offense defense like kind of breakdown is a lot more intuitive. The move list traversal, the frame data display, the punish counter display just makes such a huge difference. Seeing what is a punish and what is not without having to hold back when you record a move is some magisterial invention. It's great. And then on top of that, you have my replay and tips, which is basically you can watch your own replay, and then while watching your replay, you can at any point press one or two buttons, one button to take over your own character and the other button to take over the opponent's character for 10 seconds. And within those 10 seconds, basically each of the character's states will be replayed. So no matter what that character did, whether it was in a combo or a neutral, they'll just replay what they were doing no matter what you do. So if they do a combo and you block the combo starter, they'll still do the strings that were in the combo, which means you can basically test a bunch of what if scenarios. Like, what if I had sidestepped this heat engager? What if I had blocked this launch punishable move? And one, it gives you tips in game about like what you could do, but just taking over the replay, practicing it yourself, especially because like it brings you back into the game, right? When you're in practice mode, you don't have that feeling of like, oh, I'm in a game. Whereas in this case, you can see the round count, you can see the health bars, and it just does something different for your brain, I guess. But it's really a great feature. I've been using it a lot. You can even view other people's replays online and take over their own replays, which now I want to tie it back a little bit to getting into the online mode. So far, the biggest pro for me has been the practice mode. The story has been good, but really the highlight has been the practice mode. But now we're going to start getting into some of the cons of the game, unfortunately. I still think this is, just to throw this out there, I'm still having a blast. It's one of the best games I've played in a long time. I'm having tons of fun. But we do have to get into some criticism here. One is the online data management. Online data, whatever. I personally don't care that much. But I know people who have been put off of this game. I know people who are hesitant about this game because, one, your replays are just available for anyone to see. Anyone can download your ghosts. Anyone can take over your replays. Anyone can find you very easily, like through leaderboards and through the replay system. And unfortunately, there's not a good way to opt out. Obviously, the Tekken team has made the decision. If you're going to play online, you're going to participate in this community, which entails you sharing your replays and sharing all this stuff. And I personally kind of like it, but I gotta represent other people's perspectives. It is not for everyone. Lots of people feel that it is somewhat of a privacy issue, and especially competitive players. I've heard from competitive players that they don't want, or even content creators, they don't want their replays out there so anyone can post it to YouTube. So it's a pro and a con, right? Because I personally love going on and watching the replays. I love seeing the replays uploaded to YouTube. It's in line with other fighting games. But the ghost downloading and the replay system, there's not an easy way to opt out. And probably there should be, even if it means we're deprived of seeing, Rangchu versus JDCR, every other day. So moving on to the other slight con about online mode is, of course, the player lobbies. I think you've all heard of this. When you're in a lobby, there's no form of spectating an ongoing match. There's no form of, as far as I can tell, multiplayer. So, like, if two people are in a match and two other people are in the lobby, the two other people in the lobby can't choose to play each other. So, again, this is as far as I can tell, but the spectating thing is confirmed. Like, if you are in a lobby with 4 people and there's 2 people always playing, you can't watch those matches, which just seems bizarre to me because it's like, okay, so I'm going to join a lobby. I'm going to twiddle my thumbs because you can't be in practice mode either until the match is done. I think there's 2 potential fixes, or both of these things I would like to see applied. All 3 things. One is spectate. Just allow for spectating during the match. 2 is allow for practice mode. Let us be in practice mode while the other people are playing. And 3 is, why not? Why can't we play the other people in the lobby, right? If there's 4 people, if there's enough for 2 matches to happen simultaneously, there should be a simultaneous match option where, excuse me, maybe you get locked in between matches. So if you finish your match before the other people, maybe you get locked until you can switch. But some form of rotating matches would just make playing with friends so much more fun. The other slight con, which depending on who you are, depending on how cynical you are, is not a con or is a con, but the Wi-Fi netcode, the netcode against Wi-Fi players really is drastically worse in a lot of cases than Ethernet, which on the one hand is to be expected, but on the other hand, as people have pointed out, other fighting games have gotten better with Wi-Fi. So I decline Wi-Fi. I've gotten to the point where I mostly decline Wi-Fi matches. I do want to play everyone, so occasionally I will go for it. But if I see like a Wi-Fi 4 bar, especially crossplay, unfortunately, I probably will decline the match. And that's just because it's a 50-50, whether it's playable and okay or really, really choppy and really, really slow. And I think it's a function of Tekken being a 3D game. I think that's what most people suspect, right? If you are a 2D fighting game, you have open source rollback netcode that is really, really, really good and can be applied relatively straightforward because it's a 3D fighting game. As far as I'm aware of how this works, one, the open source implementations are not like you can't super duper easy swap them in. And two, big rollbacks are just more jarring. That's not an excuse, but has to be said. Let's move on to some pros with the online modes, though. One, the netcode between Ethernet, even crossplay, is great. I would even say great. Occasionally you will experience a slight jump. I don't know if that's PC performance on either player's end, but for me, it's definitely good enough. Ethernet to Ethernet crossplay within region is very good, even across most of the country, which I've only had a couple of matches, but is very, very good. So I'm very pleased with that. It is better than Tekken 7 ever was. I think when Tekken 7 Season 4 came out, I remember they had a big netcode buff that instantly deteriorated, but that day one, I think it's even better than that. So I've been very happy with the netcode. The other major pro of online, in my opinion, is that ranked is first to two. I love ranked being first to two for a couple reasons. One, it lets you practice kind of a tournament setting, because if you go to a tournament or if you enter a tournament online, most of the matches being played in the tournament, 98% of the matches, except for grand finals, winners finals, and losers finals, are first to two. Second, when you have a cap on a death match that's very clearly defined, you can apply, there's a whole different spectrum of strategies that open up, right? The strategies apply in a first to two are different than the strategies you'd apply in a first to infinity, which old rank match death matches, I'm just less excited about trying to strategize for death matches because one, I don't know when they're going to end. And two, it gets rid of, okay, if this is a first to 10, I know exactly how long I can save this for. Whereas in a relatively evenly matched death match, you don't really know when to cash out on stuff. And two, it's always like, is the person going to leave? Like, do I have to leave? It's just like, I love having a first two system in ranked. Even if it was a first to three, I'd be great with it. The other pro about the first to two system for me, right, is my hands are getting way better. I think I've shared this with you, but my hands, I used to have a pretty bad chronic hand pain, and they're getting way, way better. I can finally play Tekken again. But still, if I play a long death match, it's not the best. Whereas the first to two system says, okay, I can play the first to two, I can go back to practice mode, which is another pro, and I can take a short break. So yeah, I just really love their first to two rank system. A pro / con, I don't know, neutral. The ranking system has definitely been made easier. I think it does take a bit of time to move through the ranks, but there is a whole thing of like, if you have a promo, you get another promo chance. I personally like that, but I know lots of players, especially players who um, are climbing to the high ranks relatively easily. So your like pro players tend to dislike it just because you know the greater separation of skill levels means at the top they'll get better competition. I'm not quite at that level or I'm not really at that level where it impacts me that much. I'm enjoying going through the ranks, but yeah, I kind of love rank match. Also, the first to two means I'm a lot more comfortable seeing something. I got to go lab it. I can finish the set and go lab it with it fresh in my memory. Whereas in the death match, it's like, wow, that was 8 matches ago. I don't really remember the exact situation. I didn't have time to take a note. Well, I guess in Tekken 7, you could take notes between loading screens, which is just crazy. Um, but yeah, so the online has been pretty great. I've been really enjoying it. And I think the only other thing to touch on today in this kind of like review is the heat system, the character kind of roster, and real quick performance, PC performance at least, has been awesome. On Tekken 7, I need not potato settings, but not great settings. Tekken 8 has been optimized so much. I'm on 4K all high, rock solid 60, and I don't even have an insane computer. I mean, I have a good computer, so it has a 3060 Ti, I believe, but it's like a Dell, and it's not very well optimized, but rock solid 60 at 4K. So that's been great. So let's talk a little bit about the new mechanics and the character roster. So, of course, the big new mechanic in Tekken 8 is the heat system, which is basically a momentum swing tool. I will talk about this a little more in a Tekken Tips video, but it is a resource, a per round resource. It is the first time Tekken has had a per round guaranteed resource, and it gives you a few options. It gives you a armor move, which is called a heat burst, I believe. It's an armor move. It's +1. It's pretty good. It gives you heat smash, which once you're in heat is basically a rage drive, like a really, really good, typically like big damage move. Or it gives you heat engagers, which are normal moves when you're not in heat. They are like, if you hit them, you go into heat and you get +17, which is great. Or if you're in heat and you hit them, they give you a pretty heavily scaled, but they do give you a full combo. And so this is per round. Every round you get a full bar of heat. When you're done using heat, that's it. And the whole idea is when you're in heat, you're like next level character. Your character becomes next level. So King goes from, a house cat to like a jaguar. It's not quite that extreme, but it's a pretty big change from Tekken 7 because what Heat allows you to do is basically, I think for most characters, what it basically allows you to do is get at least one free mix-up. So when you're in Heat, as long as you use it properly, you should be getting at least one free, pretty beefy, pretty strong mix-up. Like full-on 50-50. That being said, it's a little early to judge, but it does seem very, very powerful, and I'm not sure how it's gonna play out in tournaments because in Tekken, all you need is like one or two 50-50s and a launch to like really win a round or really win a game. And especially in Tekken 8, when we're seeing, these Twitter combos of Yoshimitsu or Jack or Nina that do so much damage. I think Nina has like a 70 something or maybe even 80 damage down forward 2 combo, just like normal down forward 2 combo. It's a little bit concerning how quick some of these rounds will go and how powerful Heat is. That being said, from a in-game perspective, not even thinking about balancing because it's too early, I think it's a lot of fun having the heat mechanic. It basically gives you another thing to learn, which, depending on how you view Tekken, is either a disaster or like, oh yeah. For me, it's like, oh yeah, another thing to learn. It gives each character a little bit of a twist, a little bit more flavor. And I think in Tekken 7, you kind of had that with rage drives, but it was contingent on being low in health, and it was just a little bit too unbalanced, right? Because the difference between the best rage drives, like the blue stuff in Tekken 7, and the worst rage drives were just a bit too much. So the heat system, overall, I like it. It gives combo makers lots of kind of experimenting to do. It gives just from it always gives like a satisfying move with a heat smash that you can try and pull off, and it does give basically a guaranteed 50-50 per round, which, if you're the better player, it's not going to make much of a difference as far as I can tell, especially when you also have access to heat. But again, it's kind of yet to be seen. And then getting into the other system, which is like the chip damage, honestly, I don't know what to think about it. All I know is, as Azucena, as someone who plays Azucena, her down 1/2, like, rolly throw does no real damage, in the sense, like, they'll always have heat or always have gray. It only does gray damage, and it's seeable. And if they tech the throw, I get damage. So I know not to use that move. But as far as that goes, that's basically all I've really experienced. I think that's just an inexperienced thing. I think in a couple months, both myself and the community will have a better standing of how to think about the chip system, kind of like, and its impact on the game. And so then, I guess last couple of things, the character roster I think is great. I love the newcomers. Although I will say I don't have much Victor experience. I just love the aesthetic. Of course, the amount of swords in Tekken is controversial, which I've never really understood, because Yoshimitsu, I thought, was like the most classic Tekken character, one of the most classic Tekken characters, but of course, a lot of his move lists are punches. But anyway, I'm looking forward to getting more experience in Victor. Reina, I think, is the character that has drawn the most people to her. Like, she's super cool, her outfit's awesome, the color scheme, the fact that she has an electric, the fact that she has stances, the fact that her combos just look a little bit wild. Her move list, I went through her move list. I don't know if it's an issue or not. It might just be a property of this character, but a lot of the moves look like very similar, like very hard to distinguish. It'll be like a spin into a kick, and one of them is launch punishable, and one of them is safe. And it's like a lot of characters have moves like that. She seems to have quite an excess of those moves. But overall, I love the design. I love the fact that there's more characters with electrics. Right, Kuma has an electric and heat. And then Azucena is, of course, the character I've been playing. I love Azucena's design. I love Azucena's move list. I think wall running 3-2 needs to be adjusted. I think wall running 3-2 needs to be a little bit toned down. I love using it, but it is a little bit crazy. It is a bit of a win button, so hopefully that gets toned down in a patch. I think the biggest thing that needs to happen within the next couple weeks is a patch to fix a couple of things. So there is quite a few clipping situations that weren't in Tekken 7 that just happened through character interactions on the stage. Yoshimitsu's combos, there seems to be a bug. I think it's a bug. I hope it's a bug with flash and being able to loop flash by the wall and get 130 damage combos for no reason. And then also there's some guaranteed hit situations that really need to be looked at. So I think Jack can just get a 30 plus damage ender to all of his combos, which again should be looked at. And Dragunov, there's some weird situations which I don't really blame the developers for. I just think that's what happens when you put out a new fighting game, where it's oh, this was guaranteed, but the only way to know this was guaranteed is if you release the game and have thousands of people test it. So yeah, So I guess that's my review for Tekken 8. Overall, I'm loving it a lot. I mean, I think it's definitively more fun at the start, at least for me, than Tekken 7. I'm very happy that the online, in most cases, is really good. I'm very happy about the performance. And yeah, I'm very happy that the community is growing. I do want to say a quick thank you to every new listener. This podcast has been growing quite a bit. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you've been enjoying Tekken 8. And last word: don't be afraid to critique the game, talk to the developers, make sure it's constructive. But of course, I'm a huge Tekken fan, so I'm very biased towards being very positive. But there are things like some of the Super Ghost battle stuff, some of the player match spectating stuff are, real things that can be improved, and I hope they're improved in the future. So yeah, thanks for listening, and have a good one.